Most build guides focus on late game gear and late game levels. Today we're going to take a stab at something designed more for all the new and returning players of Diablo 2 and Resurrected with one of a handful of Starter Sorceress builds, the Fire Sorceress. She's easy to make and takes advantage of an extremely easily obtainable and powerful starter rune word called Leaf, and we can even transition fairly smoothly into higher difficulty builds without using a single skill reset. As we normally do, we'll hit the simple part first, the stats. Normally here I'd say that veteran players can get away with dumping stats until they get the stats they're aiming for as far as strength and dexterity go, and that should be stepped up slowly as a new player. But in this case, you can actually get away with investing early if you want, because usually 45 strength will be enough for you to get through normal, unless you want to use some of the heavier armor options, or get some good late game normal gauntlets or something that require higher strength, though chances of you getting those, pretty slim. If you do want to be as flexible as possible though, I would aim for 35 strength over the course of Act 1 and the rest into Vitality, and then slowly raise it up over the course of Acts 2 and 3 until you hit about 60 strength. This is if you want to go for that gauntlet or a plated belt option, which is pretty much the only reason you would want to get up to this amount of strength. Your most important equipment is going to be your staff, as we said earlier, which can be farmed from the Countess in Black Marsh and a little bit of shopping at Akara. You do need a Tir rune and a Ral rune from the Countess, and a 2-socket normal or superior staff. It has to be gray, so you can actually put those things in it, but it's basically 2-socket staff. You want to look for some plus modifiers on there if you can, but you can use just a basic normal cheapo staff if you really want to. It does save on repair costs if you use this as a melee weapon. This will make you the staff we mentioned earlier called Leaf. The main attraction of it is the +3 fire skills and some assorted individual skills that are on there. Personally, I stick with short staves so that I can still use it as a weapon thanks to the short staff being fairly quick on the attack speed compared to a lot of other staff options. Armor in this case is going to be what we usually recommend, and that is stealth again. It is a Tal and an Eth in whatever light 2-socket armor you can find, which is usually studded leather for this character, though if you want higher strength you can get away with a breastplate, as both of those are relatively easily shoppable in the first 2 acts from their respective armor vendors. The reason for light armors is so you don't get slowed down or have to deal with increased stamina drain and all that kind of jazz. Tal and Eth, like I said, in the 2-socket armor will give you stealth, and it is an exceptionally good starter armor. Another fun item that you'll probably have the runes for after farming for those 2 items is what I call a Tir helmet. This can be made in any 2-socket helmet, whether it's a plain one like we've been using for rune words, or even a random magical socketed one, which is obtainable relatively early, but it's still pretty rare this early on. Basically, we want to throw 2 Tir runes into it from our grinding, giving us a little bit of extra mana per kill, which is super important. As far as the rest of our equipment, like gloves, boots, rings, etc., the main stats we're going to want to focus on are resists first, as always. I generally personally focus on lightning, fire, and poison resist as like my primary resist, and the other ones are just nice to have. And faster cast rings are also very good, as well as faster cast amulets. And generally you want to aim for a 3 or 4 row belt, which, if we're staying low strength, is literally the belt called Belt and can be obtained in Act 1 or 2. So it's really easy to get those. If you did go up to 60 strength, you can get 1 more row into a belt with a plated belt or some exceptional belts. A faster run walk on boots can make life easier as well, at least until you get teleport. And again, mana per kill, if you can find it on any of these, is welcome too. And you may notice me reiterating mana per kill quite frequently. That is because it will help us sustain our mana with this particular build quite easily, because as we get Firebolt and Fireball up, we will be able to get enough kills to almost sustain our mana and have our natural mana recharge kind of take up the slack there. But anyway, back to teleport, we should probably get on with the spells, which is kind of the thing that I usually put earlier in, but ended up injecting at the end here. As you can tell by now, we are making a Fire Sorceress, but what spells you get kind of differs depending on your preferences. But for this version, we're going to lean more on mana efficiency, since that is more new player friendly, and also the reason why we get those mana per kill things, like I said. Starting out, we want to get 1 point in warmth for the super early game, because you start with a Firebolt staff, and then just start dumping skill points into Firebolt after that. Yes, your first level fire spell. As we level up, we'll add single points into Static Field, Telekinesis, Teleport, and Fireball as well. Fireball will be your splash damage source, and even at lower level, it will do enough damage because we've been pumping up Firebolt, which is a synergy for it. The reason we do this is Firebolt is our single target spell, and no matter what level it is, it will always keep costing the same amount of mana while providing a boost to Fireball's damage. Once Firebolt is maxed out, we can start moving and investing in other spells such as Fireball, Fireball, or even Meteor, depending on which you prefer. And you can use this trick of leveling a synergy rather than the main skill to keep either of those spells costs down. It does reduce the overall power of it, but mana efficiency is super important early on until you get to Nightmare and can get an insight on your mercenary. A really nice thing about this build is that it doesn't need to respec to beat the game. You get to save all 3 of them, unlike many other starter builds. A trait shared with only a couple of the other strong normal difficulty builds, period. This is because this is the base for the Fireball Orb Sorceress or even the Meaty Orb Sorceress, which are 2 popular high-end builds. And basically in Nightmare with those, you will move down the cold tree to max out Frozen Orb and of course get 1 point in Cold Mastery, so you can cut through some of those like middling resists. And yes, you will want to invest in Fire Mastery as well once you get up to 30 to get a decent amount of extra damage boost on your fire spells, just due to how it applies. But yeah, it is a very good long-term build and a very good start there. And hopefully this helps, and I will see you guys in the next starter build where we will try to get a few more in here that you don't need to respec on, but we do want to throw a few in here that you can respec on that will make normal a lot easier.